Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going over 13 fantasy football players that I think you need to be playing on a weekly basis. These guys are about to explode and they will get you to your fantasy football playoffs if you end up putting them in your lineups. Anyways, before we head into this video, quickly, if you could just do me a solid, hit that subscribe button. We're on the road to 3,000 subs. Also at the end of this video, drop a thumbs up if you did enjoy. First player up today is Jordan Addison. With Justin Jefferson on IR for at least the next 4 games, everybody's question is who is going to step into that role? Is it going to be Jordan Addison? Is it going to be KJ Osborne? Or is it going to be TJ Hockenson? Well, so far into the season, Osborne has played more snaps on a weekly basis, but the good news for Jordan Addison is that he's been earning more and more reps as the weeks go on. My main question isn't about Jordan Addison's skill level or anything like that. The main question in my mind is who is the number 1 opposing cornerback going to cover on this team while Justin Jefferson is on the IR? Is it going to be Jordan Addison? Because we might have some problems if that's the case. He's a rookie wide receiver. We don't know how he's going to handle all that pressure. Or is it going to be on KJ Osborne? Because if that number 1 cornerback is covering KJ Osborne, Jordan Addison can break loose and have a bunch of good fantasy games in a row, I believe. Jordan Addison has performed better than KJ Osborne up to this point in the season, though. Found the end zone in 3 out of 5 games so far, but the main problem so far has been the target share that Jordan Addison has been getting. Especially in week number 4, he just had 1 target. That cannot happen, and it should not happen while Justin Jefferson is out for the next 4 weeks. The next 2 games for the Vikings are against the Bears and then the 49ers, both teams that they can throw against pretty simply. But then after that, there could be some problematic matchups against the Green Bay Packers and the Atlanta Falcons if Jair Alexander and AJ Terrell decide to cover Jordan Addison. Like we just mentioned, if they're on KJ Osborne, I don't really see this being a problem at all. That brings us to our next player, TJ Hockenson. This has to be another guy to step up in the absence of Justin Jefferson, and I really think he will do so. Over these past couple of weeks, I will say he hasn't been as effective as probably most fantasy owners might like him to be. Still sitting at tight end number 3 on the season right now, though. He's getting plenty of targets each and every week. He's only seen 1 game with under 8 targets so far. He's leading the league in targets and receptions at the tight end position so far. But the offensive line is really the main issue here with this Vikings team. Kirk Cousins has not got time to sit in the pocket whatsoever. If this offensive line can hold up over these next couple of weeks, I think Hockenson can be one of the biggest beneficiaries of the absence of Justin Jefferson. He should see an increased workload in these next couple of weeks and make fantasy owners very happy in the process. I could really see him being the tight end number 1 over these next 4 games. Next up, we have Kiron Williams. Right now, Williams is a top 5 fantasy running back up to week number 6. He has that massive workload that we've been talking about these past couple of videos. He's ranking 1st in snap share out of all running backs, 1st in routes ran, and number 3 in targets for running backs this year. Ronnie Rivers is seeing less than 10% of snaps on a weekly basis, which gives Kiron so many opportunities to produce in this offense. And right now, Williams is averaging 17.9 PPR fantasy points per game, which is amazing, especially considering you probably got this guy off waivers in week number 2. Right now, this Rams offense as well is finding its rhythm, especially with Cooper Kupp back and Puka Nacua playing well. Hopefully, Tutu Atwell can be a little more involved than he was last week against the Philadelphia Eagles. But for the most part, Kiron Williams in this backfield should be started on a gamely basis no matter who they play. Last week against the Eagles, he did struggle. The Eagles have a great defensive line, and he didn't catch as many passes as he normally does. But most other matchups this year, I can see him having great games just because of that workload. He catches so many passes out of the backfield, and he makes up for any running struggles because he catches that many passes. Next up, we have Isaiah Pacheco. He is sitting right outside the top 10 running backs in fantasy football so far this season on one of the highest scoring offenses in the National Football League. And personally, I don't even think they really got going on the offensive side of things just yet. Travis Kelce has been injured on and off since week number 1. Once he's fully healthy and not limited at all whatsoever anymore, and Patrick Mahomes can stop getting his ankle landed on every single week, I feel like I see this guy's ankle getting rolled onto, they can really start clicking on all cylinders. Right now, Pacheco is getting almost all the goal line work, which is lovely to see. He also has one of the easiest rest of season schedules out of all the running backs that I've taken a look at. Let's go over it right now together, okay? The Denver Broncos, number 1. Los Angeles Chargers, Denver Broncos again, Miami Dolphins, Philadelphia Eagles. Okay, that's a tough one. We'll give it to you there. That's a tough game. Las Vegas Raiders, Green Bay Packers, Buffalo Bills. Not a tough game. You saw Travis Etienne just destroy them last week. New England Patriots, okay. If they can stay in the game, maybe they're a tough run defense. But if they get blown out, they haven't been able to score any points. So I don't even know if I'm considering that as a tough matchup anymore. Las Vegas Raiders again, and then Cincinnati Bengals might be a tough matchup there that final week of the playoffs. But up until that point, I think you got 2 tough matchups. That's it. This should be a fantasy football winner type of schedule for you. All right, Isaiah Pacheco should produce. I really do wish that Jerick McKinnon and Clyde Edwards-Helaire didn't get as much work as they are currently in this backfield, but Pacheco is still a great RB2 option right now, if not a borderline RB1 in your fantasy football lineups. And you probably got him very late in the draft, so you are loving what you're seeing out of Pacheco right now, and you're going to love what you're going to see over these next couple of weeks and into the fantasy playoffs. I have a feeling he could finish top 5 rest of the season. Next up, we have Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson Jr. With Achane being put on IR, somebody is going to have to step up in this backfield. The obvious option off the bat is Raheem Mostert, since he's done so well up to this point in the year. He has the most touchdowns out of any running back in the league with 8 currently, and is number 2 in evaded tackles at the running back position right now. Also, this whole Dolphins offense is humming currently, and I expect that to continue even with Achane out. They still got Tyreek, they still got Waddle, and Mostert and Wilson are 2 solid running backs in this league. The interesting part to me is that Jeff Wilson Jr. played well last season, and he is expected to be cleared to practice going into week number 6, which means he could end up suiting up and playing. The fact that 2 Dolphins running backs so far up to this point in the year have been fantasy relevant with Mostert and Achane gives me hope that Mostert and Wilson can do similar type of things. I don't expect Jeff Wilson Jr. to be nearly as explosive as Achane is. It's 2 totally different type of players, but I still think they might both be startable within these next couple of weeks here. Next up, we have DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift has looked great so far this year, averaging over 15 PPR fantasy points per game. And that's even including week number 1, where he only dropped 1.3 points. Kenneth Gainwell got all the carries in that game, if you remember. Everybody was panicking on DeAndre Swift, and look at where we are now. He's the stud running back on this number 1 ranked Philly offensive line team, and he is just running through massive holes on a weekly basis. The next few games is when the Eagles' schedule starts to get difficult, though. After week 6 against the Jets, which I do expect him to have a massive game in, by the way, they end up facing the Dolphins, the Commanders, and then the Cowboys back-to-back-to-back. All of which should be close games, but Swift is so dang involved in the passing game that I don't think it really matters. The past 2 weeks, he hasn't been extremely effective on the ground, but he's more than made up for it through the air with 10 catches and 61 yards. This is why we loved Ramondre Stevenson so much last season. He was getting so much passing work that it really made up for any struggles that he had on the ground, and the same type of thing is happening with Swift to a lesser degree. It's really not that hard, in my opinion, to bet on the best offensive line in football that are creating massive holes with a shifty running back like DeAndre Swift is right now. As long as he stays healthy, I can see him exploding over the next couple of weeks. Next up, we have Josh Downs. Anthony Richardson is now on the IR, which means he is going to miss at least the next 4 games of the season. In week number 3, when Anthony Richardson was not playing, Josh Downs saw 12 targets and scored 13.7 fantasy points. And this past game in week 5, when Richardson went down, Downs scored 15.7 PPR fantasy points. So far this season, he is still yet to find the end zone, so I really feel like he hasn't totally broken out yet, but he was on the top of my waiver wire list this week because I really think he has a great connection with Gardner Minshew so far this year. Right now, he's playing behind Michael Pittman Jr., who is the number 1 wide receiver on this offense, so that means he's going to draw those number 1 cornerbacks on each team. Also, Josh Downs has been playing in the slot the second most out of any wide receiver this year, and he's going to find the weak spots in any defense, as he's ranking just outside the top 10 in separation versus man coverage as well, so you can't really even play man or zone. It doesn't matter. You cannot stop Josh Downs. He's creating so much separation on every single route that he runs. I think this could be a situation later on in the year. This might be a really bold take, but Michael Pittman Jr., over the course of the first couple of weeks, he played really well, right? But he's slowly starting to regress to where he was similar to last year. Not quite as bad, but in a similar spot that he was last season. Josh Downs could be the 1B to the Michael Pittman 1A wide receiver corps in Indianapolis. That's not that far-fetched for me. I could really see that happening. Next up is Roshan Johnson. Khalil Herbert went down against the Commanders. He had that weird ankle injury. If you guys watched what happened, Justin Fields threw an absolutely horrible check down pass to him where he had to bend backwards. He ended up landing on his ankle. It was pretty disgusting looking, and I'm surprised it wasn't worse than what it was. Khalil Herbert actually came back in the game, tried to run play, and then couldn't even walk on it anymore. So that was pretty brutal. He will be out the next couple of games. Also, Roshan Johnson suffered a concussion in this game as well. Every single running back on this team was hurt. They had to use Kerry Blasingame, who was a fullback in this game against the Washington Commanders. So they were down to their last possible guy on the depth chart. Since they had from last Thursday to this upcoming Sunday for Roshan Johnson to recover from that concussion, I do believe that he is going to play in clear concussion protocol. At least I'm hoping. Now, the main option these next couple of weeks, if Khalil Herbert were to miss, which he's expected to at least miss one game, is going to be Roshan Johnson. But behind him, it's going to be Dante Foreman, who I don't love whatsoever. He doesn't catch many passes, and his ceiling is very low compared to a guy like Roshan Johnson, who is great at catching passes and has shown so far this year that he is a great runner. In my personal opinion, he is the one that you want to roster, and he should explode over these next couple of weeks without Khalil Herbert healthy. Next is Jake Ferguson. Ferguson had a rough night along with many other Cowboys players against the 49ers simply because this was a blowout game. But so far this season, he is number 2 in target rate, number 1 in red zone targets, and number 2 in expected fantasy points per game. Right now, he's expected to be scoring 19.5 PPR fantasy points per game, when in reality, he's only scoring 8.7. That is a massive difference. And at some point, the pendulum has to swing back to the mean. Even if he goes out and scores 14 fantasy points per game, you are loving that production out of a tight end. The tight end position has been so slim for so many years now that you will definitely take 14 fantasy points per week out of your tight end. Take a look at the past also. Dak Prescott loves his tight ends. Dalton Schultz, last couple of seasons, has been great for the Cowboys. Nothing is changing here. Jake Ferguson is going to be a stud down the stretch at the tight end position. I would go as far to say that I think he's going to finish the rest of the year as a top 5 tight end in this league. Next is Rashied Rice. As a Rashied Rice fantasy owner myself, I might be a little bit biased, but this situation to me is a little bit puzzling. From an outsider's view, I am thinking, how in the hell are you not playing Rashied Rice more when none of these wide receivers are really claiming that number 1 role? Marquez Valdes-Scantling isn't doing too much. Sky Moore has been a dud so far this year. Then Kadarius Toney, you have a glimpse of faith here and there from Kadarius Toney, but overall, he's not doing too much. In week number 5, Rashied Rice was only on the field for less than 33% of snaps when he clearly looks like the most effective wide receiver when he's on the field. But as long as the Chiefs keep winning games, I don't know if they really care too much about inserting Rashied Rice into the lineup and having him get more snaps on this offense. This offense, I'm saying this as a Rashied Rice owner probably, they could be so much better if they played him over Sky Moore. They really could be. Sky Moore is not doing too much for that Chiefs offense right now. And we've seen in the past that this Chiefs team can roster a solid fantasy wide receiver. Juju was having a great season last year until he got injured on and off. And then, of course, we had Tyreek Hill a couple years ago going off for the Kansas City Chiefs. At the moment, Rashied Rice is a flex play and nothing more in my opinion. But as we mentioned earlier with Pacheco, they have a very favorable schedule for the rest of the season. And I think Rashied Rice could emerge if they just get the man more playing time as the wide receiver 1 here and break out. Next up is Joe Burrow. Not too sure what I really want to make of that performance against the Arizona Cardinals. They are one of the worst defenses in the league, and of course I am excited, and I want to jump for joy and say, ooh, the Bengals are back, baby. This is going to happen every single week, but I don't want to be jumping the gun. All right, once Joe Burrow is 100% healthy, not only Joe Burrow is going to perform better, but Jamar Chase and T. Higgins on a weekly basis will all be back to the people that we knew, the players that we knew the last couple of seasons. It's just a matter of when, in my opinion, is that going to happen. Until he's fully healthy, Just get Jamar Chase the ball. He's always effing open. Get him the ball. And you saw exactly what happens when Chase got the ball against the Arizona Cardinals. Keep doing that. Hopefully, by the way, he can also get a better connection going with T. Higgins because they have not been on the same page these past couple of weeks when T was healthy. Next is Austin Ekeler. This one, he is one of the best running backs in football. Gets a crazy amount of passing work. And with Mike Williams out, that should increase just as much as in past years when Keenan Allen was injured, when Mike Williams was injured in the past. Austin Ekeler's workload out of the backfield in the passing game always goes up. The Chargers offense has looked great so far with Kellen Moore, by the way. Not really too much to talk about here. I just wanted to put him on the list. We've only seen him play in one game so far, and he performed just as we expected, scoring 26.4 PPR fantasy points and running for over 100 yards in that game. I'm expecting more of the same once he is back and ready to go. He should be ready to play this Monday night against the Dallas Cowboys. And even though his schedule isn't extremely favorable for the rest of the season, he always makes up for it with the passing work. I would no doubt be going out and trading for Austin Ekeler at all costs. I know he's coming back, so you might not be able to get him at a steal anymore, but he will explode the rest of this year. At number 13 today, we have Brandon Aiyuk. Boy, has Brandon Aiyuk been a steal from fantasy football drafts so far this year, but I don't even think his elite run has started yet. He is averaging 17.7 PPR fantasy points per game right now, and it would be a lot more if it wasn't for his injury in week number 2 and then the blowout game in Dallas this past week where he didn't get a lot of action. He's really looking like the wide receiver number 1 on this team. I said it in the last video that we made. I would pick him over Debo rest of the season to perform. Right? The great thing about Aiyuk right now is that a ton of his targets are leading to massive amounts of yards as well. He's ranking 4th in yards per target, 2nd in yards per route run, and number 2 in fantasy points per route run. If these stats continue for the rest of the season, he is going to be a top 10, if not top 5 wide receiver in fantasy football. He's going to explode. Anyways, guys, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to, as always, drop a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and also leave any questions you have down in the comments section below. Anyways, I will catch you in the next one. Peace.